Hello, everybody, and thank you for watching the show Positive Talk Hour. And it's going to be an amazing show today. We have an incredible guest that we've had tried to have on a few times. We had some recording issues on my side, and then we're both very busy people. And we're going to be talking about her wonderful book, The Unchain. And I just want to talk about this because it's a show, not tell tool for coaches, managers, and will-do teams. And I think you'll find this very exciting because not only is it a business book, but I find that she's bringing a lot of principles of understanding self-awareness, what I would consider to be spirituality as well, but she's bringing it in a very easy to understand format for people to grow as managers, coaches, and I would actually say leaders and teams as well. So, you know, this could be good for parents, it could be good for ministers, pastors, healers, whatever you're doing out there. Trust me, this book will help you. So, Ingrid, thank you for coming on the show, and very much a pleasure to have you here with us today. How are you doing today?
Just fine. Thank you, Jeremy. The pleasure's mine.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I guess my first question is, you know, I've read a lot of books, and I think I mentioned to you once that I'm a corporate trainer by trade, and I've not in all my years seen a book this in depth as far as bringing in things that I would understand outside of work, as far as understanding how to be in the now of the moment, to live in the now, those kind of stuff as a manager. I see a lot about change and leadership and coaching and you know, those specific topics, and maybe we sort of kind of broach on that topic, but I've never seen a writer, an author of a business book bring such a profound topic or principles into a business book, and I really do appreciate it. What got you started on that path to do that, I guess, is the question there.
That's a good question because it's all connected. And while this is business, as you intimated, it's really also personal, because, you know, we bring who we are to the business setting. So when this book got started, Jeremy, it was from the realization that there's a lot of suffering going on and a lot of wasted talent that is so available if we only knew how to tap it. And I got to see that we have so much more to unlearn than learn when it comes to meeting adaptive challenges, that is to say, non-technical challenges. Obviously, we have a lot to learn when it comes to technical things, but in terms of how we be with one another, how we produce extraordinary results, that is, there's a lot to unlearn. And what I noticed when even as a very early age, when I came from Germany and had the beauty of having seeing the United States with brand new eyes, I saw that there was a lot of talk, but not a lot of walking the walk.
Yeah.
And you know what? Whether it's in business situations or with parents or teachers, people smell it when you're inauthentic. They smell it when you're not genuine. And so managers and leaders can't be truly successful without being authentic and walking their walk. So that's been a guiding principle for me forever. And I know it fits into this book quite significantly.
Absolutely. So in this particular book, there's a character, and he is seems like a young new person into a company that has an interesting way of managing or a different way of managing, and he at first feels like he's struggling, and his boss actually helps him by bringing a coach. I believe her name, if I remember right, his name is Sophia, if I remember correctly, and she comes in and brings in 4 other managers to start helping him develop himself. And he's literally just kind of flipping himself and the way he thinks about things. It's always interesting. I always say the world's upside down as far as our thinking goes. And so it's helping him kind of, you know, switch that around for himself. Did you, now you're a corporate consultant in your professional life. I'm assuming you've been, this is over several years of witnessing this in corporate America, or in not whatever setting you've been a consultant in, and that's probably how this particular story came about. Am I correct? I'm not 100% sure on that, but I just assumed.
I've seen people struggle, particularly new people.
Right.
And the reason that I chose Sam as a new manager is actually because those are the people who are most available for coaching. And coaching is what I really do more of than anything else. Mm-hmm. And they're more available for that because they are not having they're not living the three most dangerous words in the English language. They are not living, I already know. And so, you know, I recently talked with the former CFO of United Airlines, and a former CFO, so I won't be mentioning any. And it was so clear that he already knew, and therefore he was not open, receptive, curious, eager to challenge and examine potential blind spots. And so this population who's eager to learn are the people, you know, in their 20s through their 40s, because they don't already know everything. So yeah. That's where, but I've noticed it, you know, in organizations. And of course, this business about being willing to examine your blind spots is such a courageous act, because it is so uncomfortable. And our culture has taught us to avoid and escape our discomfort rather than leaning into it. You know, it's counterintuitive. It's unnormal and unnatural for people. And so what has always interested me, whether I've seen it in corporations or everywhere, is to do the unusual, because business as usual has gotten us exactly to where we are, and most of us probably think that's not a really great place right now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you should talk about that, because in the roles that I take, I end up being even though I'm an employee, I end up taking on the role of like a consultant in some sense to executives. Yeah, because the first place they go to is project managers and trainers. And so they go to us and say, we've got an issue and we'd like to take a look at it. And it usually ends up being, a lot of times in these meetings in the different places I've done contract work for, I'm like, I start thinking, why did you call me into this meeting if you're not going to hear what I have to say? And a lot of it's older managers, senior executive vice presidents, and you know, those things. And basically they just want to tell me what to do and go fix it.
Well, and I imagine, Jeremy, that what they want you to do is fix other people.
Right.
In other words, they don't necessarily think that they have anything to learn. And when they experience challenges, like, let's say, conflict, a lot of people are very hesitant and afraid of conflict, even in you know, leadership positions. And they try to do whatever they know to do, which usually doesn't work. And one of the things they do is they send their people to conflict management, when in fact it is through coaching, perhaps, them, not their people, that they could be making the biggest difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's funny you should say that. I can see that actually a lot of times the senior managers are the ones. And I don't know if it's because they're so far removed, you know, and they've been in their roles for so long, or they just got no place in their life where, you know, maybe when you're exactly what you're saying, 20s to 40, when they were in their 20s to 40s, they were the most able to be coached, and they were eager at that time to grow, and that's why they got where they're at. You know?
Yes, and then where they are now is a very lonely place.
Yeah.
You know, They don't have, oftentimes they don't have peers who engage with them, certainly not on the level that we're talking about. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at these, because you give 4 steps, 4 simple steps within the book. Can we talk a little bit about those 4 steps that maybe would help people, the viewer, in their lives as well?
You bet. And let me preface our talking about this with one of the reasons that I wrote the book the way that I did is as a story, is that you and I and everyone else, we are wired for stories. Stories teach us lessons. They engage us, and engagement is like super important. And we learn much, much more from stories than being told what to do. So in the book, those 4 steps that you and I are going to talk about, and I'm delighted to talk about them, you notice perhaps that the reader gets to uncover one step at a time. And my intention was to have them be eager to see, my gosh, what is that next step? What is that next step? And so when we talk about it, that kind of quality is going to be missing. Nevertheless, I like talking about it, and it'll just be a different format. It'll be telling, not for the reader to be uncovering. Make sense?
It does, and that just means everybody, you have to buy the book. So
Thank you, Jeremy.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So when we're going into there's the first step, and I was just, because it's been a while since I've read through the book, I was just going to use the table of contents here. You break it down into different chapters. So step 1, and then you break it down into different principles: the visit, the key choice, the wolf you feed, conversation for possibilities, and first meeting of the unteam. So it's obvious that we're taking them on a journey, so to speak, into the story. And then, like you're saying, it's going to start uncovering stuff within themselves while they're reading it, because they're probably going to stop, like I do. It takes me a while to read books because I'll stop and I'll go, now where am I at in that, what they're talking about? And it starts making you think. So.
Yes. So the first step in terms of, and let's just say why we're doing this in the first place. Why we're doing this in the first place is to meet a challenge. It's in our character's case, Sam Adler. He's not doing so well, and he's very eager to be a great manager. But it's any extraordinary result that you want to produce. Any extraordinary result you want to produce, meaning something that goes beyond what you've been able to produce before. So whatever that is for you. So in order to do that, coaching is very good. And in the Ungame, I'm revealing really the coaching process. And the first step in being truly coachable and therefore open and receptive and flexible and all these wonderful qualities to create the life that you want to lead and design, there is something extremely important, and that is step 1, choosing. Now, what are we choosing? It's a different kind of choice than you and I are used to making. It's a choice that we oftentimes don't even know consciously that is available to us. So we are choosing literally who we are wanting to be in order to produce an extraordinary result out of any interaction or any situation. And this kind of choosing, I bring to a more conscious level, so it's more available to people. The qualities that you would be choosing are qualities that come from your very best self, not from your whining, me too, my whining victim self or anything like that. the one that we all have, right? It doesn't come from the place when we doubt and we worry and we fret and we this. It comes from our very, very best self. And that self embodies qualities such as creative, compassionate, courageous, kind, generous, gentle, empowering, supportive, truthful, alert, attentive. As you're listening to those, can you experience, can you notice that you are, your energy is different than if I said a selfish, greedy, whiny?
Yeah, those pulling.
Different energy?
Yeah, different energy, most definitely.
Yes. And so these qualities have actually been proven to have high energy, positive energy. And when people embody those, in other words, demonstrate them, then out of just the simple act of choosing these things, they are able to have a completely different life. Now, some people will say, yeah, but I can't choose how I am going to be. Well, the people who say that are unaware that of a distinction. And in the Ungame, we learn a lot of distinctions.
Right.
Because when something is distinct, it becomes clear, and we can use it. So they are not making the distinction that they have feelings. They are not their feelings. The people who say, but I'm hot-headed, they are basically saying, I am my feelings, whether they realize it or not. And mostly, if you look around, people act as if they are their feelings. I can't help it, they say. Well, your very best self, which you are able to choose, and we help people do this through coaching. Those qualities, you cannot guarantee that you will be that. The only thing when you choose them is, and I'll speak for myself, when I choose them, I can say, I am willing to be courageous. I am willing to be clear. It doesn't mean that I can guarantee to you that I will be. It just provides me with my direction, and it provides me, in a sense, with a measuring stick. Because if I go into a meeting, and I do, meetings that I am a little bit afraid of, a little bit nervous about, I'll say, who am I willing to be in order to produce an extraordinary result out of this interaction? And I will write down 5 qualities of contribution that I'm willing to be. So I'm always willing to be clear. I'm willing to be empowering. I'm willing to be supportive. And so we're going to show up differently when we are willing to be these things than if we go in there with our arms crossed and say, I'm going to beat this guy down. I'm going to win. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when you talk about those different characteristics or things that when you said them, I could feel myself lighting up.
Wonderful.
Inside. And when you said the others, of course, then my energy started going, and you can feel that difference in yourself. And the others are empowering, and the others are disempowering.
Perfect. Exactly. And it's not that these other things don't exist within ourselves also. There are times when I feel greedy. There are times when I want to compete.
Mm-hmm.
Beauty is that when I go through the process that I describe in the Ungame, I can get back to choosing. In other words, when I'm off, and I'm not being compassionate with someone, and I'm really being critical, I can say, what if I were being compassionate right now? What would I be seeing that I'm not seeing now? Because what we tend to do is we see in line with our thinking and in line with our values. And so why not change how I am willing to show up so that I can see you more clearly? Because you aren't only the jerk that I may be seeing at any given time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right? I mean, you are, the person in front of me is much, much more than that. And so we can see how this kind of choosing and this kind of seeing in any environment, in the business environment, it's going to lead to higher productivity, higher energy, people, lower turnover, lower absenteeism. I mean, it has concrete results that people oftentimes don't think of because we see only what's right in front of us mostly.
You know, that's interesting. You just talk about, last night I was having a conversation at one of the local churches, and we were talking about assumptions. And you mentioned that you're not just the jerk sitting in front of me. And so I thought there was an instance where I was talking to the pastor and I was talking about somebody, and I was in the middle of an assumption, and I actually had to stop myself and say, wait a second, this is my perception, and that doesn't make it correct.
Good for you.
And because I feel like we have to put ourselves in check or hold ourselves accountable to say, right now I know this is about me, and look at it. Because 9 times out of 10, I find a lot of times my assumptions are not what they seem to be. And of course, I always jokingly say, well, I probably shouldn't say that on the radio, but assumption has 3 letters in front of it, and they make you look like that. So
that's true. That is so true. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we are doing in the 4 steps, is we are taking the cover off, if you will, of our unexamined assumptions and of our most closely held beliefs, opinions, and conclusions. Mm-hmm. And we're shining a conscious light on them so that we can see whether they are still serving us or not. And when, like in your example, Jeremy, when you saw that, you were at a choice point, speaking
Yes.
about step 1, and the moment that you see the choice, it is empowering. And in what you describe, you took an empowering step, and you said, it's only my assumption. It's only my assessment. It could be grounded. It could be ungrounded. And there you are, curious and empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, I just want to jump real quick into this. I love the name Ungame, and I know we're going to go on to step 2 here in a second, because obviously it serves a great purpose, like you were saying in the very beginning. We need to unlearn. We need to have businesses unusual. Those kind of things. And I remember I've been through many mergers. Through several different companies, and they always say at the beginning to all the employees, "It's business as usual." And we all know in those meetings that's not true. So it's business as usual. And what ends up happening is very shortly after, news comes that is really affecting people's jobs. And what the employees really want to know is, what's the truth? What do I have to expect? Am I losing my job? Am I transitioning into a new job? They just want to know. And maybe we should actually start using, it's going to be business as unusual over the next, and when I get more information, I'll let you know.
Well, and that would be empowering because it would be truthful. I think the distinction there is it's business as usual from the point of view that how they go about telling the employees, that's definitely business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
But for the employee, never business as usual, because change requires, if it's going to be successful, it requires a different kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And so the Ungame, you wanted to know about the title. I chose it because I want to examine and explore, and I want to shake us out of our, what do you call it? Out of our normal routine that has so gone to the background that we're not even aware of it. In other words, we're asleep. I want to shake us up. I want to do the unusual. I want to do the unconventional. And so the ungame is about going against the business as usual. And because we need more creative solutions, and we need more creative looking at things so that we can be more empowered. I think I never used to realize when they said we're using so little of our capacity, our human capacity to affect life. And now I know how true that is, because in coaching, people get unleashed from the assumptions that have them. They don't have the assumptions have them. They don't have the conclusions have them. And what I mean by that is that people are imprisoned by them, because you can't, until you see them, until you see your blind spot, you have no power. So, the book really is about unleashing the human potential and empowering a new way of being that has us have a chance to transform the very environment in which we live. Beginning with home, work, at play, and so forth. It's sorely needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're going into step 2, step 1 is obviously about choices, so we just talked about that. What would we be talking about in step 2? What would the reader be getting from that?
Okay, once you choose who you're willing to be, whose purpose, by the way, is to corral the wild horses of the mind, okay, so that we can look at these unexamined assumptions and closely held beliefs, opinions, and conclusions. So in coaching, if you noticed, Sam always had to bring something to coaching. Sophia, by the way, which means wisdom in Greek.
Yes.
Coach Sophia didn't do it to him. It was his job to bring something to look at, something that he hadn't resolved, something that was puzzling him, something that he was curious about, whatever. That was his job. And then what she did was give him the opportunity to observe in the here and now. In other words, not going back to ancient history and why your mother and father were bad drivers and now you are,
right.
Which is the psychological track, which we're not particularly interested in. By bringing something and by the coach asking some powerful questions. The questions are of a certain kind. They are meant to have Sam, or if you're in a coaching situation, observe your thinking, the thinking that you are presenting right here, right now in the coaching. So it's a special kind of observation. It's not an observation of others. It's not an observation of the environment. It's an observation of your inner environment right here, right now, through the questions. And so if you have chosen in step 1, I'm willing to be courageous and truthful, then when a challenging question comes up, you might feel uncomfortable, and yet if you remember, I'm willing to be courageous, you might notice the discomfort and answer truthfully anyway, you see? So it's about observing your thinking so that thinking doesn't think you. so that you have the thinking, just like you can have feelings without being your feelings. You can have thinking without being attached to that thinking and saying, that's me, so that you can see that thinking is, they're just blips, on the screen of life. You don't have to believe everything you think.
Right. Of course.
So we look at that,
Absolutely. Well, you even bring up in the, there's a part where we're talking about, I can't remember how you specifically say it, but that inner wisdom, that inner voice. And I think this is what you're talking about, to pay attention to your inner world. And I always call it my inner divinity or my inner voice. And I don't think it matters as much about the terms, is that when you pay attention to that, that's guiding you. And in this situation, in this coaching situation, she's getting him to think and, understand that part of himself and have some discernment. Am I correct?
Oh, yes. And that's really well put, because in the coaching situation, the coach's job is to distinguish between that inner voice of wisdom and, there's another inner voice, and that's what our Buddhist friend called monkey mind. And you notice that each chapter has a graphic that has a monkey on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to acknowledge the fact that we have the monkey mind, or what I said earlier, the wild horses of the mind. So a really good coach is never going to collude with your monkey mind. The coach will help you see when you are in it, and helps you distinguish that from your voice of wisdom. And oh my gosh, think about that. If you could always distinguish your voice of wisdom from that self-limiting chatter, that doubts and fears and worries and frets and is anxious and is going down this rabbit hole and that rabbit hole and can't focus and so forth, wouldn't that be a gift in your life?
Yes, it would be. Yeah, because we spend how often with that mind, and you see it, not just in business, you see it everywhere.
Everywhere.
I do see it, since we're talking about business, I do see it in meetings a lot. I see it as a trainer, because I teach subjects that make people, get people to think and start processing to become more self-aware. And then you'll see, and they have preconceived notions, which is the programming, the unlearning that you were talking about. And it's very interesting to watch when they finally get the aha moment, when the monkey mind quiets enough for that other part of themselves to come forward, and you're like, it's a good feeling to watch them do that, to grow. And then you see the change in them when they start, interacting with their teams and the people they work with on a daily basis. Is very extraordinary, because then they start affecting everybody else. So, and
that's what has you love that work, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's my passion. So we've made a choice here to unlearn, at least to be brave enough, to be courageous enough to go down there and ask difficult questions, and to discern our inner voice and learn that wisdom from ourselves. So then we're going into step 3, and can we talk a little bit about that?
You bet. And so, yes, step 1 is really, let me review, who am I willing to be in order to produce an extraordinary result out of this interaction? Mm-hmm. So the choosing, the qualities of being, of contribution. Step 2 is observe, and really what that is am I willing to systematically dismantle my structure of knowing, meaning how I think things are put together, right? Wow, that's, when you say yes to that, then observation will be very fruitful. So step 3 then is is what I call say yes. It is, again, the question arises, say yes to what? And what you are saying yes to, and this is really the ultimate challenge in this coaching model, in the Ungame, what we're saying yes to is the lesson that we have become aware of or we have learned in step 2 through the observation. In other words, as an example, if I observed that, let's see, if I observed that I have, I'm sure I can think of a better example, but it's the only one I can think of right now. Let's say I have a glass in front of me and I describe it as half empty, right? We know all have heard about this. And I always thought, gee, I'm this person who always thinks of the metaphorical glass as half full, you know, and all of a sudden in this observation through these questions, I am discovering that I really look for what's missing rather than for what's present in my employees, let's say, if I'm a manager. Well, doggone it. Huh. That's an awareness that's troublesome to me. That is to say, I'm glad I'm having the awareness, but it changes my image of myself as someone who usually sees things from a very positive perspective, the glass half full. So, so I've become aware of that in step 2. Now, I haven't necessarily said yes to that, because it's uncomfortable, isn't it? It changes how I see myself. But step 3 is about saying yes to that lesson. It's about surrendering, in a way, to a lesson. And as soon as we hear the word surrender, our eyes glaze over, right? We see that the same thing as submit. There's nothing we're submitting to here, but there's something in saying yes that's about letting go of something that we have had before as a closely held belief. Mm-hmm. And that takes courage. It takes a hero to do that. Monkey mind won't do that. When you're in your non-voice of wisdom, when you're in your monkey mind wisdom, you're going to hang on tight, you know, to the status quo, to how you've always seen things. You're going to say, no, 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 that's wrong. You know, you're not open to lessons. You're going to protect yourself. You're going to keep yourself safe, you know, in the status quo. So this saying yes is a special kind of saying yes. And again, the question is saying yes to what? It's saying yes to the lesson that you are learning in coaching, which obviously, I mean, I think it ought to be apparent by now that the kinds of conversations you can have in this coaching model are conversations that are so different, so unusual, and they are profound because they can change how you show up in life, how you be. So it's the ultimate challenge, the saying yes to. Step 3 is.
Yeah. You mentioned something where you were talking about. I guess that would be letting go. I guess when you're surrendering, you know, letting go, and some people like to use the term letting go, letting God, and all that kind of stuff, or you know, just let go and be in the now of the moment. You know, whatever. I think it's exactly what you're saying. You have this idea that you've always seen, this paradigm, and then so you're now new information has come in, and it's shaken the tree up a little bit, that paradigm, and you have to kind of let go or surrender to that idea so it can assimilate, and you can discern what is yours and what is not, you know, and what works for you, and grow with it. I think that's probably one of the hardest lessons for people to, you know, they come in, they make a choice to grow. They make a choice to improve or become something better, and then they go through that process. And then when it comes to that part where they have to let go and grow, I think I found that's the most difficult for them. They'll listen to the information. They'll say, yeah, that's great. And I think that is, as a coach, one of our challenges is to bring that, up for people, and help them with that. So
well, and that's why I mentioned it as the ultimate challenge, because I experienced it exactly as you described. That it's hard for people, and one of the beauties about a one-on-one coaching situation, and actually I do coaching groups also, and even there it still comes out to the same process. And what is profound is when people realize how deeply they can go in not into their history and their psychology, but into right here, right now, and learning these lessons. But what characterizes the coaching, whether it be group coaching or one-on-one, is that the environment that a good coach creates, that I create in this coaching model, is an environment of safety as well as challenge. Because you can't learn anything if you're feeling self-protective. In other words, then you can't do the surrendering, the letting go, the really hard part. So it has to be safe. At the same time, it has to be challenging. And so, if the client is doing gyrations and, trying to self-protect and so forth, a good coach is going to be able to confront that, stand in front of that, and see it and challenge it. And here's what I found, Jeremy, which is wonderful, and that is that people really, really want both of those. And if I don't challenge my clients, like if I get afraid, if I get into my monkey mind, which is possible, right? If I don't challenge them, they notice that, and they notice it, and they don't like it, and they know it's a contribution for me to challenge them, just like it's a contribution for me to create a learning environment in which they feel so very safe. Like my clients know that, I see them as whole and complete, with nothing missing, with nothing to fix. There is nothing to fix. There are only those things that you observe, that when you observe them, you have all your own answers, and you will change what you need to change out of that. You will be motivated. So my clients know that, and they know that they are safe in this coaching space. At the same time, they know I'm going to not let them off the hook with some stuff, and that's what really works. It works, and people are energized by that, because people are so much more capable than we give them credit for.
Absolutely, that's so true. And sorry, I was just what we were talking about was making me think. It was making me process. So then we go into step 4, the final step, and we talk about that and wrap up the 4 steps.
Okay, so the 4th step, after you have chosen who you're willing to be, after you have observed in a way you've never observed your own thinking and thoughts, after you have become aware of and claimed, that is to say, surrendered to the lesson, then the 4th step is act, and to take action, because any coaching model, whether it's this one or another, is about action. If you don't put something into your physical reality, then what you've had is a nice conversation, and that's it. No coaching has taken place unless there is action that results from the lesson that you've become aware of and claimed in step 3 that you're now going to take authentic action on. And at first, if you remember from reading the book, Sam was sort of like, oh, duh, act. I already know all about that. Mm-hmm. Remember the 3 most dangerous words in the English language, I claim. And no wonder, because as Americans, we are very, very action-oriented. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes to our advantage, but also to our detriment, because we act before we think and before we do these steps, before we get clear. And so he thought he knew everything that there was to know about ACT. But in ACT, that 4th step, it's directly aligned to what you've become aware of. So let's see. For example, if a client has become aware that they distance themselves from their employees, and their employees don't like them. They might fear them, but they distance themselves, let's say, just as an example. Or a dad or a mom, right, who has that with their kids. Then the lesson is that they say, I want to be more vulnerable. I want to be more available. So then in step 4, you say, well, I get it, but how will you demonstrate that? What's your authentic action that you will take? And so perhaps Sam or anybody at the next meeting is going to maybe make himself more human, make himself more vulnerable, make himself more human, make himself more vulnerable, and say, I've been struggling with this, or have it head on. I know that I haven't been very available to you, and I want to change that. You see that he's demonstrating in physical reality, in a meeting, his desire to be more available, more vulnerable, more human with his employees so he can connect. So he's become aware of being rather distant, which, he at first made it their fault. And now he realizes, oh, I have a nickel in this quarter, and that's his lesson. And so he says, okay, fine. Here's an action that I will take. At my next meeting, I'm going to level and share some of the thinking that I have been keeping to myself, which would make him a bit more vulnerable, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So does that make any sense?
It does.
Action derives from the lesson rather than just any old action?
Yeah, it does. And I believe you call this process if I remember it, adaptive learning. Adaptive learning. So
yeah, adaptive learning, because it's about changing behavior, and technical learning is very different, except that we don't make that distinction all that well.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense, because I use something called an experiential learning method, and the last part of it is projection. What are you going to do? What's your action? And of course, if we don't have the action, it's like you said, it's just a really nice conversation, and it doesn't really accomplish anything. And oftentimes, people do come into workshops and classes, and they come because their boss told them to go, or because it's part of their training program, or whatnot. And some people come and they're eager, but even ones that are eager, I found they read books and they come back and they're like, I'm so excited about this book. And then they have a lot of momentum. And then it comes to a month or 2 later, I'm like, how's that process with the unchain going? And they'll be like, well, and they'll kind of fall back into a pattern. And so I find it interesting that people, I think it's important what I've told people is say, hey, listen, you're going to fall back into patterns. Then it's time for you to sit down and reassess, reevaluate.
Yeah, exactly. And see, what happens is life happens. Mm-hmm. Life happens. And one of the big things in coaching and in the Ungame is that we all need support. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons, successful coaches have coaches. I have a coach. My coach has a coach. Because we realize the incredible value of support. And support has many forms, but it also is, and I have seen this, that people do find it so supportive to talk out loud. Mm-hmm. In other words, even just to share some of the thinking clarifies it for them. And so to have a support buddy, whether it's a coach or a coworker or a friend or, all of that's very helpful. So I think we cannot do it alone. Support is important, and the Lone Ranger, it's just not appropriate anymore.
I agree. I mean, I have a coach. we have to. I mean, it's and they even say most success books talk about that the most successful people always had a mentor. They always they always had somebody to go to, and that mentor became their friend. And and they always had a respect for who they were because they went to them for their expertise, their understanding, where they've been there before them, and that kind of stuff. And I find it, and I think Socrates said it best, is the only thing that I know is that I know nothing. And so I think what he was trying to get at is, I have a lot of knowledge, and I think you talk about that too. I have a lot of head knowledge. I've read a lot of books, and I think that we can intellectually understand that, because you're talking about in America, the attitude of, well, I've already read this before, like Sam talked about. I've already seen this before. I've already done this. Well, duh. And in a sense, you have the head knowledge, but now we have to do the practical part of that, is like with the actions, what you're talking about, so we can integrate it into our everyday habits.
Walk the talk.
Walk the talk. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very interesting. I have a storm going on here, so it's interesting how that works out, and very. I think this will be very beneficial to everybody. So I just want to say, how do they find you? How do they find your website? And what's your website for them to view or to see?
They can go to ingridmartine.com, and then they'll see that they can get to the ungamebook.com from there, or yourleadersedge.com. ingridmartine.com is going to get them to where they want to go. Okay,
and I'm assuming that you can purchase the Ungame on Amazon,
yes.
Barnes & Noble, all the normal spots.
You can purchase the book at Amazon, and you probably have to request. Some Barnes & Nobles are selling, but you have to request it probably. And of course, on my website, if anybody wants a signed copy, it's not important to me to get signed copies, but some people like that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to pull up the book one more time. And the book is called The Ungame. It's by Ingrid Martine, and I would highly suggest. We made a lot of topics about business, but I really think that whatever it is you're doing, you can benefit this. I've been involved with starting a spiritual center recently. I think the people that run spiritual centers in churches, I think that even if you feel that you're not in a leadership role, you can probably read this book, and it would help. And so. And as usual, and as I always say, we've never learned too much. We've never grown too much. So definitely, get out there and purchase this book. If it resonates with you, I'm sure that it will definitely help you. I know that I've gained some more awareness and things to think about and ponder with my own practice, so in my own life. So I think that's a benefit. And I just wanted to say, Ingrid, thank you so much for being on Positive Talk, and sorry for all of the trouble we've had to get to this point, but it was a journey to get here. So, and I just want to thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, and I want to thank you. It has been energizing, and I've enjoyed it, and life's too short to not be enjoyed, and life's too short to spend it with anyone who's not thoroughly delighted in my company.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll keep on doing these positive talks. It's been a new journey because I've done Soul Talk for so long, the radio show, and now we're bringing the video aspect to it so that we can actually see our authors and how they interact with us. I think it's a benefit for all of us to grow. Thank you so much.